Oh, hi there, this is Chandra Easton from Star Astrology Healing, Living in Light. Just here to talk to you about the 2021 completion of the year of decision. This year of decision really started in March last year, which is the beginning of the astrological year, and completes when the Sun leaves the sign of Pisces. And so I'll be speaking in this talk about some of the Piscean themes. The focus of the talk really is to help us understand how to navigate the world from a heart balanced perspective, because the world's increasingly chaotic and difficult, and so I'm going through some of the spiritual tests associated with the sign of Pisces, and I'm doing this by looking at some of the themes, looking at the tests, looking at the 3 decans of Pisces, a little bit of the imagery, some of the esoteric and the exoteric, the keynotes and the rays. I'll explore the chart for the minute that the Sun moves into Pisces here in the southern hemisphere, and then I'll conclude by talking about the test, the labour of Hercules as he attempts to learn the lessons of the sign of Pisces. So let's begin. Well, a very enigmatic sign of the zodiac, Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac. We started with Aries, and the last. So if you think about a circle, and if you cut a circle and spread it out on a horizontal, Aries, 0 degrees Aries, the first degree of the zodiac would be at the extreme left of this horizontal plane, and the 360th degree, the last degree of the circle, that equates to the 30th degree of Pisces. So Pisces has a great deal to do with endings, just as Aries has a great deal to do with beginnings. And yet, if you don't look at the horizontal line and you connect them in a circle, then 0 degrees Aries touches 30 degrees Pisces, and that's the point where the straight line becomes a circle. Yeah? So there's very strong themes around endings and beginnings associated with Pisces. It is one of the mutable signs of the zodiac. There are 4 mutable signs. This is Gemini and Virgo and Sagittarius and Pisces, and together they operate upon what is known as the common or the mutable cross, which simply means in your life and my life that these are the areas in life where we're more flexible, more variable, sometimes where we lose our focus. The symbolism for Pisces are 2 fish. One of the fish is swimming uphill, or upstream I think is the correct way to describe it, towards the spiritual realms, and the other fish is swimming downstream towards the worldly or the material realms. But the 2 fish are tied in the esoteric symbolism by a cord linking these 2 arcs. And that symbol really represents the challenge of Pisces. Do we want to go up the stream to higher consciousness, or is it easier just to go with the flow and collapse and fall into the lower consciousness, the worldly consciousness, and forget that we are souls having a human experience? Pisces is one of the last 4 signs of the zodiac, and these 4 signs are the universal signs, and so the lessons of Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius and Pisces, they are there to teach us to look beyond our immediate surroundings, our immediate world, our immediate feelings, and to look through the veil, through the astral veil, beyond the beyond the beyond. There are several 3 themes associated with the sign of Pisces, and it really depends on. And so this applies to you if you're a Sun in Pisces or a Pisces rising, or maybe you've got Mars in Pisces, or maybe your North nodes or your South nodes in Pisces, or maybe you've grown into some Pisces by progression. Yeah, but wherever the Piscean energy is in your chart, then these 3 themes will be there, one or the other. And it depends upon where we are on the spiral of awakening consciousness. So just to explain, if we're at the lower point, think about think about a spiral that's very broad at its base, and each turn of the spiral gets narrower and narrower, a bit like a pyramid. And so by the time you get to the top, the spiral's completed in a point. So at the bottom, let's say the third, maybe it's more like half of this elongated ascending spiral, we are literally in the worldly part of the mutable cross, the worldly part of Pisces. We are in the mother or the earth energy. Our awareness is really of what is around us on a physical planetary level. The culmination, and we have many, many lifetimes when we move through the signs of the mutable cross, Virgo, Pisces, Gemini and Sagittarius, learning the lessons of the material world, and we are kind of bonded or captive of the material world. And bondage or captivity, they are some of the themes that you find over and over and over in people who have strong Pisces. We're caught somewhere. So in those earlier incarnations when the soul is not aware of itself, the bondage is to matter, to the mother, to the earth. By the time we've moved through great effort, learning some of our lessons up to the middle third of this ascending spiral, we've moved from the mutable cross to the fixed cross. And simply stated, this means that we have become aware of ourselves as a soul, and the higher self in you, your compassionate heart, your light-filled consciousness, is attempting to wake up and free yourself from the realms of the personality. There's a great struggle occurs. And the theme for this part of the path is renunciation or detachment. We have to learn to identify ourselves as the soul and to recognise that we are human, and we do make mistakes, and we do live in the material world, but that's not really who we are on an essential level. So as the soul attempts to birth itself into consciousness and gain control over the ego or the personality, this is the struggle that occurs for some Pisceans. This is the struggle of the fixed cross. It's the struggle for the probationary disciples, for the disciples up until the path of initiation, up until the third initiation. And so that's the middle section of the spiral. Now the top, and it's not really a third, it's probably more like, I don't know, the amount of incarnations when we are lost in matter and have forgotten who we are, it's more than a third, maybe it's a half, maybe it's 2/3. And then there's a series of incarnations that are fairly dramatic as as our soul tries to take control and have a right relationship with the personality, where we have to learn detachment and renunciation. And the third phase, this sort of very top of the spiral, is when the soul knows who it is and has taken a fairly effective degree of control of the ego and is beginning to be able to work as a world server. Remember, we spoke about this in the sign of Aquarius, and has mounted the cardinal cross, otherwise known as the higher way, and is aware on omniscient and omnipresent level of cosmos. Yeah? So this is before us. This is where we're headed to. If you and I have some Pisces, we will eventually get to the cardinal cross, where we will get a cosmic consciousness, where we will be the risen soul. We will be who we truly are in the world. We won't be covered by Maya and illusion. So that's the goal for all Pisceans, is to move through bondage and captivity via the spiritual practices of detachment and renunciation, and that will then lead to the death of the personality and the exaltation of the soul, and then the immortal self will come and interpenetrate into one's life, and we will become enlightened. It's going to take us a while, but we may as well get cracking. So the themes associated with this third phase of Pisces are sacrifice and death, that is death or transmutation, so that we recognise that we are spirit in matter. Right? And we learn to operate according to our divine will. Now this whole process of moving through these three themes of Pisces, this is going to take all your incarnations on Earth. Maybe you've had lots and lots and lots of incarnations where you've been trapped in matter and the world and felt stuck or bonded or captive in some way or another. Maybe you're in the process of having lifetimes where there's a struggle going on via the fixed cross for your soul to gain some control over your personality. And eventually we will arrive at the higher way, the path of initiation, where we've learned the lessons, where we've sacrificed whatever needed to be sacrificed, where the personal self is no longer running the show. That's the death of the personality. And we will have a cosmic awareness, and we will be omnipresent and omniscient in nature. This is a huge task, the sign of Pisces. And just to sum it up, some of the difficult issues associated with Pisces in the lower vibration are emotional selfishness, emotional negativity, getting lost or caught or glamoured in psychism, being very acquisitive, wanting to have power in the material world, gain money, sex and power. All kinds of personal inhibitions may get in the way. We may be overly attached to people or places, or we may fall into self-pity. Yeah, it's just some of the tests we need to overcome. Pisces, like all the other signs of the zodiac, has 30 degrees, and it's divided into what we refer to as 3 decans. So the degrees between 0 and 10 degrees are governed by Neptune. And generally speaking, this is from about the 18th to the 27th of February. It varies year to year. So if you're born in that first decan, then Neptune is your primary ruler. Yeah? And you may have to work really hard to lift yourself out of the astral realm and to consciously connect with the highest and the best on a compassionate level within yourself and others. If you're born on the second decan, and that's between the 28th and the 9th of March, then the moon will be your primary ruler, and you may find that you're drawn backwards, always drawn backwards through the family, through old experiences, old habits, old lessons. There's this pull back into matter. And if you're born on the last decan, then Pluto is your ruler, and you probably feel like you've had a lot of death in your life, or you know, the themes of life and death are there. You would have been born between the 10th or the 20th of March. Because, of course, Pisces is, along with the signs of Cancer and Scorpio, strongly connected to death and rebirth. It's got a great connection to mystery, a great connection to oceans, to dolphins. And I looked up one of the Sabian symbols for Pisces. Now, when the Sun moves into Pisces, that's 0 degrees Pisces, then the Sabian symbol that applies every year when the Sun enters into Pisces, and this year it's the 18th of February, the theme is a public market. And that just sort of got me thinking about the fact that we have been, this pandemic, this virus has reminded us all that yes, we live our separate lives, but really we're sort of in a marketplace. You know, all the markets have crashed and fallen, the economic markets, because we've forgotten that we're one humanity, one family, one species. We have, you know, one lesson to learn, learning to love, learning to be love. Yeah. So the public market theme seemed to be important to me in some way, and also the planet Neptune that is currently, well, I say currently, it's just left. It has been in the 19th degree of Pisces in 2020. It's now in the 20th degree, but all through 2020, Neptune was moving in and out of the 19th degree of Pisces, and the symbol for this is a table set for an evening meal. And again, I started to think about all the limitations that we've had on eating and convivial meals and families. And then I sort of also started to think about the Last Supper. I don't know why. That, you know, Pisces got a great deal to do with the Lord Jesus and the Piscean age, and you know, the tests and trials and tribulations that he went through, which we all go through on the path of discipleship and initiation. And I started to think about the Last Supper. It was the last time where he broke bread with the disciples, and I think it was around about that time that he was betrayed, and I wonder whether 2020 was kind of like a Last Supper for humanity, and where we have to kind of remember all those teachings to do with the Holy Week and Pisces and the Last Supper as we enter into 2021. Okay, I'm going to talk to you now about some of the stars in the constellation of Pisces. It was the Babylonians who determined that the Piscean constellation looked like a large fish. Yeah? But there are many interpretations. It's the largest constellation and can be seen from 90 degrees latitude north. That's extremely high north, isn't it? All the way down to 65 degrees latitude south. So it's a very, very broad, wide-spanning constellation. I think it's the Persians who thought that it reminded them of their two major rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, that empty into the Persian Gulf. It sort of looks like a very large tick in the heavens. The symbolism, I think it comes from the... Now I'm a bit confused here. It's a mixture of the Greek and the Roman symbolism I have here. Is they say that the two fish of Pisces represent Venus and Cupid. I don't know whether Cupid is Mars, I wonder. The astrological influence. So it's the two lovers, and they're tied together with a knot, and they're threatened by a monster. Yeah? And in order to escape the monster, and incidentally, the monster is a 100-headed dragon, which I take to be the dragon, the dark dragon head of humanity. My shadow and your shadow and the shadow of every nation, the worst, all the unlearnt lessons of humanity that we've collectively failed to learn over the last couple of thousand years of the age of Pisces. I think about that as the 100 dragon heads, and the dragon's name was Typhon. I think that's in the Greek tradition. So there's Venus and Cupid, the eternal lovers, and they're threatened by Typhon. And this threat is all part of a greater battle. And there's a battle going on between the gods on the one hand, let's call that the holy ones, I would think of that as the enlightened souls, the holy ones. Humanity, we're the dragon, unfortunately, the 100-headed dragon Typhon. And somewhere caught in the middle of all of this is Mother Earth. And as I was reading the mythology, the Greek mythology, for this, test where Venus and Cupid, I think Venus and Mars, try to escape the dragon and are caught in the middle of a battle that's raging, I started to think about the great change that's going on and how humanity are being tested and our dragon heads are rising, and the gods in their heavens, the holy ones, are attempting to wake us up and teach us, and somehow or other Mother Earth is caught in the middle of this. So this mythology of Pisces seems very relevant to where we are at the moment. Now, there are various stories. Venus and Cupid, they transform themselves into a fish to try and escape the monster. So I suppose we have to transform ourselves out of the lower vibration Pisces to the higher vibration Pisces. In the midst of this attempt to escape the dragon, they're aided by water nymphs. I would say that we need to call upon the angelic host and the spirits of the elements of fire, earth and air and water. And they're also aided by Pan. And I think Pan correlates to the planet Saturn. And the outcome, I think, is that all is well. This is a very, very abbreviated telling of this myth. But, it just reminds me of the great change and the fact that we're trying to bring together the different sides of our nature, the male and the female, the yin and the yang, the oriental and the occidental, the rich and the poor, all of that. We need to transform ourselves into the higher fish. We need to call upon the aid of the angelic host. We need to call upon the aid of Saturn. I think that means pay our karma. Somehow or other we have to do this not only for ourselves but also for Mother Earth, for Gaia. Yeah? And in the end all will be well. So this is the battle that we're involved in. As I mentioned before, the sign of Pisces, the 30th degree of Pisces, touches 0 degree Aries, and this is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the ending. There are 4 major galaxies in this profoundly large sign of Pisces, and one of them that is extraordinarily beautiful is called the Grand Design Spiral Galaxy. It has 10 stars within it, and within it has a very, very bright star, whose name I've forgotten just at the moment. There's a Pisces dwarf galaxy, there's also a double, what they call radio galaxy, and there's a colliding pair galaxy. So I see the theme of duality in this. We have 2 galaxies colliding. This is like the 2 fish, the male and the female, the yin and the yang. Are we going to work together, or are we going to pull apart? Are we going left or right? Are we going up the spiral towards love, compassion, or are we following the path of least resistance back to materialism? We have to resolve this duality. And somehow or other, the lessons of Pisces are all about this grand design spiral galaxy. And when I was looking, mesmerised at this beautiful galaxy, it sort of reminds me of the spiral in a newborn baby's crown of hair, or the spiral in a shell, or the spiral in your fingerprints, spiral in a galaxy. It's kind of like we are one with the cosmos. We are the beginning and the ending, the Alpha and the Omega. Yes, the galaxy is divided into 4 divisions of all these many stars. The North Fish and the South Fish. And the North Fish has a north chord, also known as the home of the fish. And the South Fish has a south chord. I was reading some of the astronomical data associated with this galaxy, and I was astounded to read that the brightest star, known as Alrisha, also known as Kulat Nuna, is 26 times larger than our Sun. It is a very interesting constellation. It has a group of stars known as the Turtle. There's 5 stars in that group. It has another star known as a Circlet. Yeah. There's another star called the Mouth of the Fish. There's a red star there. There's a knot, another star that has a symbol for a knot. And there's a dwarf star that's solitary. And this solitary dwarf star is 3 billion years old. Yeah, so as I was just exploring the stars of Pisces, I started to kind of gain perspective. If the stars are 3 billion years old, who and what are we? Yeah? We are just a cell in the body of cosmos. Yes, and that 19th degree of Pisces, where Neptune's been last year, did I tell you that the symbolism for that was a master instructing his pupil? And this is the mouth of the fish. And I'm thinking, well, what happened in 2020? Well, we had a global pandemic. And this is the master instructing his pupil. So clearly we are the pupils, and the pandemic is here to teach us. Okay, let's continue to talk about the esoteric and the exoteric nature of Pisces. So exoteric simply means worldly. If we're following the fish that's falling back into matter, then we are simply going forth into matter. And that is the keynote, the exoteric keynote. And we're following the 2nd and the 6th rays, and we're very passionate, very idealistic, very devoted, very loyal, but we often have major boundary issues and we lose ourselves. If, on the other hand, we begin to respond to the esoteric, which is the soul's vibration coming through the sign of Pisces, then we follow the keynote, which says, I reach the Father's home, and turning back, I save. And we realise that everything that we have learned or gained is not for us, but it is to be shared. We have reached the Father's home. We have reached a degree of bliss or insight or healing or acceptance. And we have to turn around and assist other people to find their spiritual home. And if we're following that esoteric keynote, then we come under the influence of the first ray of will and power. And we will learn something about surrender, and we will learn about letting go of our personal will, and we will learn about trusting God and Spirit. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to shift now to look at the chart for the minute when the sun moves into Pisces here in Canberra, Australia. And it's 9:44 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time on the 18th of February 2021. Yeah, so the first thing that my eye is drawn to is that despite the fact that the sun's moved into Pisces, that there are a lot of planets still in Aquarius. Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Vulcan, all in Aquarius. We still have a great focus around how we define society and what are the rules and parameters of the society of 2021. This is globally, of course, it's not just Australia. Saturn's there creating limitations around society. And I should say that Aquarius governs, groups and therefore society, but it also has a very strong connection to the fifth ray and therefore technology and medicine. And so, of course, the big focus here in February and March will be around the antibodies and the vaccination for the virus. Yeah. And which parts of society will have it, and who will get it, and who won't get it, and who will want it, and who won't want it, and how effective or non-effective it is. All of these things are part and parcel of the Aquarian stellium, and that's with Saturn there. There'll also be less tests and limitations on things like the stock market. There'll be tests and limitations around things like space exploration. Mercury is retrograde in Aquarius, so there will be many things that we are simply that are not revealed and not easily seen. So there may be things that we see on the 6 o'clock news, and then there'll be the real truth hidden underneath. That's the Mercury retrograde. Jupiter's still sitting in Aquarius, encouraging us all to find our group and our resonance point, and to operate according to spiritual laws of grace, and to find and expand acts of generosity. And Venus is in Aquarius as well, so there will be great sharing, and there will be wonderful I'm hoping new technologies, new science, breakthroughs, possibly maybe we will have revelation to some of our extraterrestrial brothers and sisters. And Vulcan continues to be in Aquarius, and so Vulcan is still working to remove the concretized matter surrounding our brains so that we can activate and find the resonance of ourselves as from the heart. The Sun in Naught Pisces is also there with Neptune in the almost the 20th degree of Pisces. That's the beyond. I must look that up. It's no longer the master instructing his pupil. It's another degree. I'll just look it up right now, actually. Yeah, so where Neptune is in the early part of 2021, the symbolism is a table set for an evening meal, and that was that theme that I mentioned before, that reminded me of the Last Supper and our capacity for generosity. So you can say 2020 had the teaching, the master instructing his pupils through the virus and the pandemic, and now we have a table set for an evening meal. So that's what they're the two planets in Pisces. Neptune continues to have an influence on the health of the nation. Certainly here in Australia, it's in the 6th house. It is square to the nodes, but the square is starting to widen, which I would take to be that all around the world the second or the third wave of the virus is starting to lose its grip. This is the aspect between Neptune and the north and south node is now 3 degrees instead of exact. Yeah, so things are getting slightly easier by the time we get to the second half of February and March. And I think it's probably by about the end of March that Neptune moves out of range of the nodes, and I would imagine that the virus will have moved into the background. The lesson will be over. Whether we learnt it or not, well, that will be another matter. Okay, the strong things in this chart is that there's a triple conjunction. This is Uranus, the Moon and Mars in Taurus. Extremely volatile triple conjunction with tight squares to many of the Aquarian planets. So of course we've seen the National Guard marching into America. We've seen what's happened to democracy, not only in America but of course in many other places. I would imagine that the breakdown of democracy and civil society, or the lack of civility, you might say, in society is quite global. Very strong in the Middle Eastern countries with this Taurus Aquarius squares. It's hard to know if there would be any countries that would be free of this challenge of finding a way of moving forward in a balanced manner. This chart has Libra on the ascendant, and certainly in the Australian context, the struggle is to balance the fiscal responsibilities with the societal limitations. Here in Australia, we have continued to have border closures and locking down of certain industries, and many people and sectors of the community falling through the gap economically and on a health level, whilst other parts of our society have actually benefited by greed or collusion or whatever. So this sort of who gains and who loses, I think, is the theme, and it's not meant to be gaining or losing. So they're not meant to be winners and losers, remembering that the theme is a table set for an evening meal. Whatever you have, you need to share. Whatever a nation has needs to be shared. Whatever an individual or a family or a country has. And of course there has been a great deal of fighting and competitiveness over all kinds of things. Trade, who's to blame, who's got the better vaccine, who's going to get it. There's a lot of infighting going on rather than, sharing. What else can I see in this chart? All of the planets, with the exception of the Earth, are locked in a nodal barrier. And the nodal barrier, it's a bit like, I suppose a good analogy for this would be, if there's a classroom of teenagers who've been behaving badly, and the teacher can't decide who the ringleader is, he'll keep the whole class back in detention. Well, all of humanity are in detention because some sectors of humanity have been behaving badly. And this lockdown continues to be there, from the third week of February through till the third week of March. Humanity are literally locked down and locked in to face our own bad behaviour, not to create more schemes for greed and acquisition and power, or not to become emotionally selfish, or all of those lessons associated with Pisces. What else can I tell you? There's a very beautiful, this again is just in the Australian chart because we have Libra rising, there's a beautiful air grand trine, and it goes between Mercury and the North Node in Libra. And I would say that there are certain lessons that have been learnt, certain things that the Australian government will learn, and I think this would be to do with who are our trading partners and what it is we produce and what we manufacture, and how dependent we've been upon international tourism or international students in our universities, or selling our coal to China. Somehow or other I think there's a skeleton of a new way forward being built in Australia. There's also a yod falling in the Australian chart, trying to break up some of the rigidity or conservatism or material focus to get a right balance between money and power and people and truth. Yes. It's a very lopsided looking chart. You know, if you look at it, you'll see most of the planets, they're on the right-hand side. And I guess what I'd say is that the government's in crisis and society's in crisis, and the crisis is very much felt on a family level. You know, that could be your family, your community, that could be businesses in your community closing down, it could be family businesses, it could be, it's kind of like, how do we support all sectors of the society to be the best that they can be without this this fierce competition and power. And of course the danger of the Moon, Mars, Uranus, and we saw it graphically not all that long ago across the televisions, where the ugly face of violence comes out and is paraded. You know, so there's when people's livelihood is threatened, or when they can't pay for bills or buy food, or you know, when the crops fail, or when there's a sustainability crisis, because this chart has a sustainability crisis, then violence and anger erupts. You know, people get stressed and they behave badly. Yeah? So there's, you know, on the one hand we're being locked down to fix some of this poor behaviour, but the very lockdown may well engender more bad behaviour. Not very hopeful, am I? There is a very lovely trine between Mars and Pluto, so I would say that there are some people who are able to just cut their losses and realise what they've lost, what's dead and over and finished, you know, operating on that theme of the Alpha and Omega, and stop looking back but look forward. Okay, I think I might leave that brief foray into the chart, and I'll talk now about the 12th labour of the spiritual aspirant who became the spiritual disciple. That's Hercules, who becomes the spiritual initiate. And he becomes the initiate in those last 4 signs of the zodiac. And of course this does not mean that if you're born in the last 4 signs of the zodiac that you're more involved than someone born in the middle 4 or the first 4. Not at all. It's much, much, much more complicated than that.